Hey, don't know if you guys missed us last week, but we're back. Everybody is tired of getting sick, so the only people who are sick now is probably the Miami Heat. I'm John Devine. This is Anthony Chang. Welcome to another episode of Heat Check. Speaking of sick, how sick in the stomach do you think these guys were after Cade Cunningham drilled that three-pointer last night to win the game?
Yeah,
Um, and we're filming this on Thursday, so it was last night for us. Well, no, we're filming this on it's Thursday. We're filming
Thursday.
it on Thursday, so it happened last night.
Yeah, it was painful. So there have been different types of losses during this awful skid. Um, there have been blowout losses, obviously New York, Memphis. Those two, the Heat laid an egg. They had no chance in those two games. But last night against Detroit, it was a competitive game. The Heat led by 12 early. I think they led by 8 early in the fourth quarter. They led by I think 2 points in the final 3-4 minutes. They had a chance to win that game. And then for it to end with Cade Cunningham hitting a really, really tough shot over Bam Adebayo, guarded as well as he possibly could. A bank shot that rattled in with 2 seconds left to break the tie and win the game for the Pistons. It was brutal. It's like yes, the Heat are playing poorly. There's no doubt, right? That's obvious. But man, it's like poor play, bad luck, just all mixed together. And it's been a really, really, really rough stretch. And you wonder mentally how these guys can really regroup, right? I mean, eventually they have to win another game, but yeah, it's just they're going through it right now.
I, it's like, okay, what do you say? I guess you can take some solace in the fact that your two big players played well. That's great. I mean, Bam played well. Hero had his moments. But he who shall not be named, we won't go there. But they need a leader. And when I say that, it's nothing again. We're talking on court. Who's going to take charge? Who's going to demand that you pay attention to them? And it's like, it's like every sport. There's always someone on the court, on the field, or whatever, who you have to pay attention to. And as he or she goes, everybody else reacts to. Here, I guess for the Heat, you go straight up. Look, Cade Cunningham for the Pistons, that's who is either going to have the ball or going to do something that made you react. Here it's like, well, it could be this one, it could be that one, it could be that one. And for Bam, for everything that we love that he does, and we talk about initiating out on a break, in a half-court set with the game on the line, you still have to get him the ball a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so you need a leader. I'm sorry. I wish that wasn't the case, but you need one.
They're missing Jimmy, right? I mean, late in games.
I told you I'm not saying his name, but okay.
I'm gonna say it because he's coming to town in a few days, so we're gonna be saying it a lot. Yeah, they're missing Jimmy Butler, and I've talked to guys on the side just about late in game. I wrote a story today. Their clutch struggles. They were one of the best clutch teams the last few years, obviously with Jimmy kind of leading the way and being that guy. This year they are, I think, 13-23 in the clutch. Obviously,
according to your story that went up today, yes.
Yeah, so that's obviously not good, and that's a big reason why they are where they are right now. And it's not even just this 9-game skid. You go back to February 6th, the day the trade was made. Heat are 4-16. 4-16. That is like Washington Wizards level.
Yes.
That is the old Detroit Pistons level. That is that is among the worst teams in the league. They're just not a good team right now. Should they be this bad? That's another conversation, right? I don't think they're this bad. I just can't believe. I refuse to accept that. I mean, Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, even before the trade, even before February 6th, they really didn't have Jimmy Butler. After mid-December, between the stomach illness, the 3 suspensions, when he did play, it wasn't Jimmy, right? It wasn't the normal Jimmy, and they were a 500 team for the most part. And then all of a sudden, you think, okay, well, you trade Jimmy. Obviously, that's not great, but you got to do what you got to do. You add Andrew Wiggins, you add Davion Mitchell, you add Kyle Anderson. Think, well, we already were playing without Jimmy. We got these 3 guys, 2 who are rotation players, 1 who was a former All-Star, should be better, right? they've gotten worse. So it is really kind of hard to explain what's going on because they shouldn't be this bad. And that's why I keep saying, like, I think a lot of it is mental. Some of it is also just like bad breaks too. I mean, they put themselves in these positions. Sometimes you make your own luck where you give up a lead and then it comes down to a final shot, and that's what happens. Um, but yeah, it's really hard to explain kind of a little bit of what's going on right now, other than the fact that late in games, when they keep blowing these leads in fourth quarters, they don't have that guy. They're missing Jimmy Butler. That was their guy, and all of a sudden on the fly they're trying to reinvent themselves in these clutch situations, and that's hard to do, right? Because again, I mean, Jimmy, he led a lot of that for them. He was the guy you threw the ball to, draw a foul, slow the game down. You could always depend on him to make the right play, and they're trying to find the formula now, with this group, and they just haven't been able to do that.
Well, here's the other thing about that person. You're gonna name him. I'm not naming him. We'll talk. We'll use his name after next week, after Golden State comes to town. The other thing is, no matter what, he got to the line.
Yes.
And looking at your story today, the Heat is doing a terrible job of getting to the line. So when you have this momentum, and I think they've blown like 19 leads and then 17 19 double-digit leads and 17 fourth-quarter leads, or the other way around.
It's 19 double-digit, most in the NBA, and their second most, 17 blown fourth-quarter leads. So
okay, so that's a lot, right? So you're looking at that. When those runs happen, the ability to stop the momentum and reset, take a deep breath, and do that, because you only have so many timeouts. That's what getting to the free throw line can give you. And now they're not getting to the line. So all of a sudden that 6-0 run is like a 12-2 run, turns into a 15-5 run, and your double-digit leads are evaporated. So if anything else, you don't have the ability to stop these runs unless Spo calls every time out the lane. So let's shift a little bit. Today is Pat Riley's 80th birthday. Yay, happy birthday, happy birthday. What present would we give Pat Riley right now, outside of one win? What kind of person what kind of player would we give him for a birthday present? And don't say his name, because that's not acceptable.
Great luck in the draft lottery? I don't know. Get the number one pick. Get a top 4 pick in the draft, I guess.
Well, let's talk draft lottery, because, we just have to remind people, because we could go up to 2 picks, or, a couple weeks ago it was more like 0. That's not going to happen now. Right. But you want to lay out where these picks are. So the Heat has Golden State's pick. Only if I was going to let you fill in that blank.
Yeah, only if it's a top 10 Warriors pick, top 10 protected Warriors pick. So basically, if the Warriors don't finish with a bottom 10 record, which they're not going to at this point because they're playing really well with Jimmy Butler. I think right now their pick is I'm looking right now. Right now their pick would be at 22. So they're not going to finish in the top 10.
Right. So have to lose everything.
Yeah, the Heat are going to get their pick, right? It's probably going to be like low 20s, maybe upper teens at this point, depending on what happens here over the final month of the season. So they're going to get that pick. And then the Heat's pick, which right now is actually 8th, pretty high. If they make the playoffs, their pick goes to Oklahoma City. So the Heat would then just have one pick in this year's draft at whatever, 19, 20, 21, 22, somewhere in that range. If the Heat don't make the playoffs, Heat would keep their pick. They'd be in the draft lottery, right? Have whatever, based on wherever they're slotted, maybe a 20% chance, 15% chance of a top 4 pick, right? Which is not nothing. I mean, that's not a chance. But the downside of that, and this is why many people would rather than make the playoffs and even give up their own pick this year, is then that pick, if it doesn't convey this year, would be a totally unprotected 2026 first-round pick to Oklahoma City. So it could be, let's say next year, they're really bad again. God forbid Bam gets hurt, and they're one of the worst teams in the league. They have a number 2 pick. That pick is totally unprotected, and it's going to OKC no matter what. So that is really risky. And then on top of that, because you can't give up unprotected picks in consecutive years, based on NBA rules, the 2027 pick to Charlotte for Terry Rozier would then turn, which is lottery protected at the moment, would then turn into an unprotected 2028 pick, because it wouldn't convey in 2027 since you're giving 2026 to Oklahoma City. Whatever. Basically, at the end of the day, if you miss the playoffs this year, yes, you get 2 picks. You possibly get a top 10 pick and the 20th pick in the draft, let's say, but then your 2026 and 2028 picks that you owe those 2 teams will be completely unprotected. And yes, I talked to Bobby Marks about this, who works for ESPN, a former NBA executive. He says it is risky, but you have to have faith in the Heat that they're always going to be competitive, right? They're probably not going to. When's the last time they had a top 5 pick, right? It doesn't happen on Beasley, 2008. Like that's a long time ago. So the chance of them having a top pick is slim, but there is always a chance, and we've seen it this year. It's not like they're one of the best teams in the league, right? They're, again, next year, if they don't make any big changes, they're going to be probably in the bottom half of the league again. There is a chance that if there's an injury or something goes wrong, it could be a top 10 pick, top 5 pick. And that is the worst case scenario. So again, if you make the playoffs this year and you convey the pick this season, yes, you only have 1 pick now this season, but you protect yourself from the worst case scenario of giving up a really, really high pick because it's unprotected.
I want you to clarify something for the people out there. Okay, they're kind of locked into the play-in scenario, right?
Yeah.
If you're in the play-in, does that mean you're in the playoffs, or do you have to win your play-ins?
You have to win the play-in.
Okay. So people then, so they could still make the play-in, lose the play-in, and then keep their top 10 pick.
Correct. Right? They could be
lottery pick, sorry.
Yeah, they could make the play-in, lose in the play-in, and have the 8th, be slotted 8th in the lottery.
Okay. So Anthony likes to give you doom and gloom. I'm going to try and give you a glass half full thing here. That is, this draft, and correct me if I'm wrong, is considered deep.
Yes.
Deeper than usual. You have Cooper Flagg. You have a couple guys from Rutgers. Can't believe I'm saying a couple guys from Rutgers are top picks. But it's true. It's considered a deeper draft. 1, you have that. 2, you get in the lottery. The rules have been changed through the years, so you have a better chance of actually moving up. So let's say you get a 5 or 4 or 5. Okay, by the time all the machinations are done. Is a 4 or 5 this year a better outcome? And I'm not sure you can tell me, if you know, how the draft is lining up for next year. Or is it better to hope and still go anywhere from 5 to 15 for next year?
Yeah, it's tough. And even Bobby said this. He's like, I don't know if there's an equation to figure out what's the best scenario, right? It's hard to really know. Next year's draft is going to be good, and I've heard that it's even deeper than this year's draft. Maybe not as top heavy, but you do have the Boozer twins, right? Who we've seen down here in Miami.
I would say one of them is one and done.
One of them is going to be one of them is projected to be one of the top picks in the draft next year. If everything goes right next year at Duke for him, the next year's draft is going to be good as well. Right now, where the Heat are, let's do the odds here. If they finish 8th with the 8th worst record in the NBA, which is where they are at the moment, they have a 23.5% chance of moving into the top 4, and a 5.3% chance of getting the number 1 pick and basically getting Cooper Flagg. Again, that's not nothing. Yeah, the odds are you probably will stay at 8, right? But you have a chance to move into the top 4 and get a guy who could be your franchise player for the next decade. You have a chance. The question is, the argument to wanting to miss the playoffs and get that pick is, are you going to have that chance again next year? Let's say you convey the pick this year, and the next year you have your pick. The chance of the Heat finishing again 8th worst record in the NBA, I'm guessing the Heat would probably say they probably hope that's not the case, right? So this might be their best chance that they have over the next number of years to have a top 4 pick. This might be it. So yes, you open yourself to the risk of maybe things go wrong and we get up a really high pick in 2026 28, or we take the opportunity of we're already the 8th worst record. We're going to have a 1 in 4 chance to get a top 4 pick. Let's seize on it, right? Let's do it. because we don't think we're going to be in this position again. We have confidence that we can rebuild this roster and be better next year. Let's do it. This is our chance to do it. Again, I don't think that he think like that, right? You know Eric Spoelstra is. He wants to win every game, right. But there is an argument. It is a conundrum when you really think about it of what should the Heat want? What is best? Because okay, you make the playoffs, even draft picks aside, you're going to face, let's say, Cleveland in the first round. Like, what good is that going to do, right? So, yeah, I think big picture wise, you could make the argument that keeping that pick is good because you do have a chance of getting a lottery ticket, right? And getting a top 4 pick and getting a franchise player.
Look, people like to make the argument that Cooper Flagg may be your next generational talent. Okay, looking at some of the top names, Cooper Flagg out of Duke, Dylan Harper out of Rutgers, who can get to the hole, kind of player that you might need. Ace Bailey from Rutgers, VJ Edgecombe, Derek Queen from Maryland, Trey Johnson from Texas. That we just went 6 deep. If you're telling me that they get a shot at one of those guys, I think that's okay. Now, you spoke on Spo. There's a very real chance they do everything they can to win as much as they can, and they still end up in this same spot. Correct. It's just the way this is falling. So, I'm not advocating, hey, Spo, tank it up, get the best pick.
It might just happen. They might not have control over it.
It can totally happen. Yeah. We're talking a 1 in 4 shot of getting a top 4 pick. And if you get that 1 in 4 shot, look, the Wizards they're such a doomed franchise that there's a very real chance they have a god-awful record. And someone like the Heat or someone who could use a real leader and step up, jumps them and gets that number 1 pick.
What if I told you this, JD? What if I told you this? At this moment, if the season ends right now, the Heat didn't make the playoffs, the Heat would have a better chance of getting a top 4 pick than the Wizards do of getting the number 1 pick. How crazy is that? Because the Wizards right now have a 14%, with the worst record in the NBA, have a 14% chance of the number 1 pick since like you said, the NBA kind of changed the lottery odds to kind of deter tanking. The Wizards right now have a 14% chance of the number 1 pick. The Heat have a 24% chance of a top 4 pick. So, again, odds are they won't get the top 4 pick, right? There's 76% chance they're not getting the top 4 pick, but it's not bad odds. There's a chance.
It's not bad odds. And like you said, 2008 was the last time they had a shot. If we're looking at this year, we're looking at names and can equate it, especially now the NCAA tournament's hitting. But we're seeing games, and you're kind of mentally plugging in. What could this guy give that team that they need? What could this guy? You see legit names now. I'm not willing to wait a year on it. If it falls this way, and like you said, if you're going to get a number 1 seed, then last year there was a number 1 seed, but then who got hurt, but you have seen, hey, the Heat rose from an 8 seed. They can still give people problems. They gave Milwaukee trouble. Right. They gave Boston trouble. If you can't tell me that we're going to look into this season and go, if they fall in and win that play-in, they can really give the number 1 seed or number 2 seed trouble. I don't feel that comfortable this year with it, just from the way it's constituted or the way it's constructed. So get your help. It's okay. Yeah. Do everything you can, because even if you get that top 4 pick or top 6 pick or whatever, you still have to put him in to that team. You still have to get all the players around so everyone has their roles set. You still have to do that because they're not meshing right now. That's for sure. Yeah. So okay, let's do that. We talked about Pat Riley's birthday. Early present for Pat Riley. In your heart of hearts, who do they, outside of Cooper Flagg, because, that's everybody's. What kind of player are we trying to get to help them in the future? Because I don't think Pat Riley is leaving until he feels like he's got this ship righted. And it's not right now.
Yeah, I think it's a scorer and a shooter, right? A guy who can be a number 1 option on offense. And not just a number 1 option in the regular season, but a number 1 option in the playoffs. And that's usually a big wing who can shoot, who's athletic, can score in the paint, right? Who can draw fouls. So that's the type of guy to be looking for. Again, defense, Eric Spoelstra, we've seen it. Even this year, like they've been a fringe top 10 defense for most of the season, despite all the struggles. They're going to be fine on defense for the most part if they have decent talent on that end. But offensively, it's been a struggle. I mean, they've been a bottom 10 offense now. I think this will be the third or fourth straight year of that.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, I mean, they have like the worst offense, I think, over the past month in the league. They need offensive talent. That is what they need. And any of those guys you mentioned in the top 4, 5, 6 prospects in the draft this year kind of would fit that mold. And they would help and just infuse much needed offensive punch to this roster.
And I'm going to say it's not even it's draw double teams. It's draw spacing.
Yeah. An advantage creator, right? Got someone who can create advantages for the rest of the guys in the court. That's what they really need.
And I will say this, and I am not a Duke fan. Let's be honest. There's certain teams and there's certain places where it's like, hey, there are certain teams that people love to hate. Boston comes to mind. Dallas Cowboys come to mind. Duke comes to mind for me. But I will say there is a guy on that team who, Cooper Flatt, like I said, he's the unicorn. What's his name? Knuffle? I don't know. 6'7", swingman, can shoot, can actually pass some too. If you don't get that top 4 pick and he's available, I think that goes a long way of what you need. Like I said, don't like Duke, but
yeah,
I like his game.
He's currently projected to go 10 by NBA.com.
Well, if he comes here, I'll learn how to pronounce his name properly.
I mean, if the Heat finish with the 8th worst record in the NBA and they miss the playoffs, and let's say they don't even move up in the draft, they just end up at 8, they might be able to get him. Or a guy like Jeremiah Fears, who also is a really talented guard, 6'4" guard who is athletic and can score. So, yeah, I think I definitely could see both sides of the argument, and that's going to be the talk of the next month, right? However the season goes, of should they keep the pick? Should they want to make the playoffs? Should they not? Should they want to, convey the pick now so they don't risk the unprotected picks going out in 26 and 28? I see both sides. I kind of think, and it's kind of what, again, referring back to my conversation with Bobby Marks, he's like, you just got to let nature take its course. Whatever is going to happen is going to happen, and you live with the results. The trade is already made. The pick structure of the trades are, that's already been set up. You kind of just have to live with whatever happens. And there's good and bad sides to both outcomes. And we'll see. We'll see how it unfolds now, in the next few weeks.
I agree. But it'll be fun to watch. And look, if they continue to play this way and the slide continues, and let's be honest, even if they right the ship, your die is kind of cast for this year. Kind of know what you're dealing with.
Sure.
So we're going to have to keep having these conversations anyway. And maybe as the tournament continues to go on, and you always see it, somebody emerges and you're like, wow, that guy looks pretty good.
Dwayne Wade? Marquette?
Happened with Dwayne Wade. It even happened to like guys who never played, like Bryce Drew. Some guy who hit some 3-pointer at the end. You're like, holy crap, this guy's good. And he goes into the first round. And you're like, how'd that happen?
Yeah.
This is how it happens. So you're going to see guys rise and fall. I do have confidence in the Heat. And the way I know Pat Riley's not a big draft person. He wants to go whale hunting. But they have done a good job in the draft. They have found usable people. So if you want to use that same, what's the way to put it? If you want to use that same way of looking at players and evaluating players, and now you're doing it in a top 10 scenario, I have faith they're going to pick somebody who's going to be a very useful player for this rotation. That would keep them from going, oh my gosh, look, now it's a top 5 pick in 2026. So that's where we hold on. But as we go through, Anthony will be there. Barry will be there. Expect some surprises for the Warriors game next week. We'll have people there.
When does the skid end? Does the skid end? They play Houston tomorrow, who's like on an 8-game winning streak, number 2 team in the West. Right. I'm assuming they don't win that game, but I guess we'll see. So that will be the 10th straight loss. I think Sunday is the day. Charlotte coming to Miami.
We say that, but didn't they lose to Charlotte already?
They did lose to Charlotte.
I'm just saying.
But that
nobody's safe. They lost to the Wizards too.
if they don't win that game, then it's like, how long is this really going to go? Because then they got obviously the Warriors on Tuesday,
the Hawks,
Atlanta, and they go on the road.
Maybe the Sixers, which is a week from Saturday.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see if they got next time we speak if they've won a game. We'll see.
Well, we're gonna hope by the time we come back to you guys next week they've won a game. I don't want to just talk about the Golden State Warriors. And oh no, look how great that new player fits in. I don't want to talk about it. And looking at you guys' comments when you're watching this stuff, you guys don't want to talk about it either. So, but we know it's a part of life. It's just gonna happen. And honeymoons don't always last anyway. So we'll see. But that's what we have for you this week. We're gonna see you next week, and we'll see. This season comes more and more into focus, no matter whether we like it or not. Happy birthday, Coach. We hope for some better news for you coming down the pipe, but I don't know if it's coming up this week. So for John Devine, I'm John Devine, and this is Anthony Chang. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.